Hi, we are Tim
Carolina.
and we are a couple of friends, colleagues, and former coworkers. We love the contact and building products space, and for the past 15 years, we've been bouncing ideas off each other, talking perspectives, residential, commercial, sales, technical, research, data, and so much more.
And that inspired us to share our experience and our guest experiences to broaden perspectives in the construction verse.
Construction
And
verse.
yes, and it's all made possible by you and support from Project Fluent. And before we dive in, we have really exciting news. Build Perspectives is partnering with Advancing Prefabrication 2026, taking place this year in Dallas. I can't believe it's almost here,
It's
February
crazy.
2nd through the 5th. So if you're looking to optimize prefab from design to setup through installation, this is a great event. And you can use code Build Perspectives 10, the number 10, 10, for 10% off registration.
And for folks who have watched the cost of events skyrocket since the beginning of COVID or before, especially in the prefab world, 10% off is not nothing. So please take advantage of it. And I know that a lot of folks are just now finding out about some of these events, or building product manufacturers, developers, even lumber and building material suppliers that want to supply these folks are just now, typical adoption curve, even though these have been going for about 8 years, then they're just now finding out about this, and that there are more events past World of Modular and some of the other more regional ones. So February 2nd through the 5th, that's crazy. The first one I went to was during the Super Bowl. So it was turned into this big Super Bowl party. This was, I think, 2019. Chris Tate and I went. It was pretty cool.
I wonder if you'll be there this year. Yeah, it's their 10th anniversary. I cannot believe how it's been 10 years already since they started advancing prefab.
Build Perspectives 10 for 10% off and 10-year anniversary. What's wild is that I met, I guess it was 2019 when I first met Amy Marks, and a lot of folks always want to speak with Amy. She's of course a leader in the industry, not just in the data center world, but the prefab world. But there are so many speakers. This year is the biggest year by far in terms of the speaker lineup and the topics and the tracks. And it's not always easy to target what you want to get out of it. There's You just can't get to everybody, and most of the sessions are not recorded. So how do folks make the most of events, especially when they're track related, not like a trade show? Obviously, a trade show, you're kind of walking around it. And these events do have a small trade show. But do you have a secret sauce for making sure that you get around
Mm.
and talk to the people that you want to either network with or learn from?
Yeah, I do. I'm a planner though. I love planning, so I love getting my hands on that event calendar and the agenda, taking a look at all the people who are going to be speaking and the tracks that I'm most interested in. And if I were still in building product manufacturing, I would want to concentrate on going to see the people that I want to be in the room with, that I want to be doing more work with, and seeing how, seeing what they're sharing, how I can be of value and, learning from them. There are so many different tracks. I was looking at over 110 speakers this year over 3 days. So it's impossible that you're going to get to all of it.
Wow,
So
that's
I would,
that's more than doubled since I started going.
yeah. And, man, I think we're going to get to this later. There are so many great shows in 2026. I bought my big calendar from Jesse Itzler. Yes, you have it too. I bought mine.
I got my
I've
big
already
one,
spread it
big
out.
ass calendar.
Big ass calendar. I've got, yeah, here's my old one that I don't even want to take down yet, but I've already started with my new one and I've started to put in all these trade shows and there are like too many. I can't, I'm having a little bit of FOMO here and I know that I won't be able to make it to all of them. And I know you feel the same way.
People are starting to split them up, and I often wondered if folks would pay for a fractional event attendee say, hey, I want to find out these things. Of course, if you're consulting and you have an assignment specific for a customer or industry, you can and should go to industry events that are relevant to those assignments and scopes, because you're going to, meet more people more quickly to get the information that you need for the assignment, or connections that you need that will help your customer, and more likely also be able to bring value. I love that about you, and how I approach the events too. I learned a lot actually from Mark Mitchell. He would make introductions to me with no thought of getting anything out of it, and he just knew it was important that, either that one of us got to talk to the other. And he tracked me down at the event. Hey, I got this person. Grab him by the arm. So you're supposed to meet them, or grab me by the arm. And that's a big value you get at events, is to be able to just genuinely, authentically, honestly just say, hey, you're looking for something like this. I think I talked to so and so over here. Hang on a second, let me grab them real quick, and make those connections. I love that strategy. And if you have your eyes wide open for it, it sounds hard at first, but if I found for myself, if I log away those conversations, even though I don't remember everything, that I am able to make more of those connections for people. And I'm trying to follow that example of not asking for anything in return. Of course, the people you want to work with in industry, the ones who matter, are going to remember that you made those
Mm.
connections. And if people don't remember you, I think that's okay. Maybe it wasn't supposed to happen that way. I'm not a fatalist, but it does. There's there's um, there's a lot of connections to be made, and a lot of things to talk about, and not all of them are going to stick, but the ones that do, I found, are hugely valuable, making friends in the industry that I stay in touch with and talk about stuff that's not even work related.
Yeah, and I remember years ago, maybe a decade ago, you said something to me. You used to say, "I'm not good at staying in touch." I don't know if you remember you saying that. And I was like, "Yes, you are." And I think part of why you admire that in Mark is because you have that. You are a super connector too. You've introduced me to so many people. I've met so many people through you, and I know that there's no ulterior motive there. And I agree that, and I love that. I love being a resource for people. I love
Oh,
making
you so are.
introductions. Yeah, I do. It's just there's no payoff at all. And I know that you've told me before, hey, like people pay for that kind of an introduction.
I know,
Um,
but you told me the same thing too.
well, yeah, we got to
If it
look
weren't
out.
for money, this, like, just imagine if it wasn't the whole thing about money and making a living, that would speed up a lot of those connections. Or maybe it's a motivator, I don't know. But I really always admired about that about Mark. And you know who else is like that? Zach and Beth are like that too.
Hmm.
So it's nice to travel in those circles. And I think one of them are actually gonna attend this too. And we're gonna have a lot of thought leaders there. Amy, of course, led the space. Amy Marks, at the beginning of this, as the ambassador for advancing prefabrication and the chair of the event. So that's going to be cool. But one thing you pointed out when you were looking through the list of speakers, there are quite a few from the healthcare industry. You pointed out. I'm glad you pointed that out, because I sort of maybe didn't pick up on that, and that some of the kind of incumbents that we have thought of as early adopters for the space haven't they're not really on. At least they might be attending, but they're not on the speaker list.
Yeah, and that's what I would defer to you on this because you've been in this world a lot longer. As a manufacturer and a salesperson, I have sold projects that are prefab, and my observation is that in the last maybe since COVID, really, the successful projects that I'm seeing out there are healthcare projects. Like everything that I see, like when I was still living in LA, the City of Industry, City of Hope, hospitals, UCLA Medical, like all of these big projects were prefab were healthcare projects. And one of my last projects that I worked on is a enormous, huge healthcare project. So I wonder if those early fast casual restaurants or those retail stores or those, car washes and oil change places that were like mostly spec'd prefab, I wonder if those are still in the running. Seems it's just data centers and healthcare now.
Yeah, I wonder that too. I know that the time, so when you have a big healthcare project, you have a lot more at stake. Of course, if you have 100 restaurants to build, in aggregate, there's a lot at stake, but each one is kind of on its own and its own, profit and, opening schedule and stuff. I know that build schedule has gone up about 20 days over the last 5 or 6 years for a QSR restaurant. And you talk about that as a percentage of the project, it's big, but it's nothing like if you were to add, say, 25% to the build schedule for a healthcare project. That's just absolutely not acceptable. That project's never going to get off the ground if that is the schedule that they're faced with. So, what is the answer? It makes sense that after you pointed that out, as I started to think about it, it makes sense that that should be a predominant sector for any kind of prefab, whether it's MEP or facades or mass timber or anything like that, building structural systems. So that's interesting. Of course, data centers, like you said, that's kind of a duh because everyone knows how fast those have to go, and there's no one in that industry that isn't thinking prefab at some level. So I think they're kind of in that early majority type of the adoption curve, whereas healthcare and maybe say civil municipal projects maybe wait a lot further the other end. So but one thing when it comes to the advancing prefabrication space, encourage everyone to look for any of these events. Go look at the tracks, like Carolina said, and pre-plan. One thing I love to do is to send cold messages through LinkedIn to the speakers. Be really thoughtful. I'm not asking for anything in return. I just tell them, look, I'm looking forward to meeting you at the event, and I'm excited about your panel on this topic, or your speaking about this, and I hope I get to catch up with you afterwards. And those generally are very, when you do the LinkedIn connect, if I'm not already connected with them, connect with a message and just be really thoughtful about it and not have it be AI, not have it be canned, but it's worth it. It is really worth it. Those connections. So that's something I recommend. And then of course the workshops. One of the workshops that we did there a couple years ago, the executive workshops, was they took a set of plans. We all got a set of plans, and what would you pitch as the solution provider or the designer or architect or whoever consultant? What would you pitch to the owner? To what method of delivery, what mode of delivery would you pitch? And so what we our table pitched in the one was to do mass timber, and that one was actually because you don't know how the project actually went. It's a project that's finished, and so you go, okay, well, yeah, you pitch the mode of delivery, and then at the end we'll tell you how it actually went, and it actually was a mass timber project. So that's just an example of some of the workshops, but I really feel like, I know you probably do too, that participating in the workshops is super valuable and great networking, and you learn a lot.
Yeah, it's where you can apply what you're learning. So going to see a speaker is great. You can take notes, but it's kind of like when you go to one of these events and then you come home and you're like, okay, what do I do with all that? Where do I put those notes? Who do I contact? What's the follow-up? If you attend a workshop, you're already integrating and consolidating that into your brain, into your work ethic and your bag of tricks, if you will, next time you're working on something. It gives you that integrated part of whatever it is that that the workshop was about. So that I love workshops.
I just know at some point we're going to probably have our own workshop together, but you are doing this with Project Fluent. The workshopping is a very big part of that. And it made me think with this particular topic because two big ones for me next year will be the Mass Timber Conference in Portland, which is a different organizer, and then this one. They both happen in the late winter and spring, early spring. The job site or project fluency has a different level. To you need to level up when you're talking a prefab project. And I don't know how much thought you have given to, I'm sure you have given thought about Project Fluent, but it seems like another layer that people could really find value in learning a lot more about.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, especially coming from the sales side of things. If a designer understands, an architect understands all of the specification journey, the stakeholders, they know how things work. But if you're coming in from the software side, the context side or the building product side, you need to understand what's at stake at every stage and for every person. And with prefab, and I just wrote an article about this, it's going to publish later. Um, with prefab, the schedule for selection is condensed. And so designers and everybody has to come to an agreement 2 to 4 months sooner than they would for a field constructed project. And that I love that from a sales perspective. It's great because you can count on that. You lock it in. Yes, stuff happens as it does with every project in the industry, no matter what. But when every party can get locked in and every party understands what's at stake for each of the stakeholders, then you're just better off. Projects seem to just pull it off better and more smoothly and with less RFIs and delays. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I can't really get into specifics about projects I've worked on, but yeah, the delays and unexpected testing and unexpected uh, you know, details and things that didn't quite fit, and all of that stuff needs to be worked out well in advance. And that's the beauty of industrialized construction and prefab.
Yeah, scope, gap, and creep are a persistent issue in the industry, and it's not totally avoidable with prefab. But the advanced, like you said, the advanced or the condensed schedule and the early schedule for building product manufacturers means that if you're locked in early, it's much harder to be flipped off the project. And of course, if you're integrated into the system and it's being prefabricated, then that it's more solid. But you need to know that customer and that method of delivery and how your system works with it and when and what the sequencing is,
Yeah.
and that being well versed in that really gives salespeople a leg up. And then
And
the other,
credibility.
right,
Yeah.
and the other part of that, I think there's an inherent patience that is needed. Of course, we've talked about empathy a lot, and what that compressed schedule does to people. Sometimes it's like, we're doing so much that would normally we would do in a year, we're doing it in 3 months. But the the importance of having patience, because there's a lot happening in that time, but also if you don't get that project, but you are dedicated to that type of customer and that type of build, then keep at it. Make sure that if we're not on this project, that we're on the next one, and keep honing the skills and keeping those connections alive, because it is a long sales cycle for most prefab. And
Hmm.
if you miss one, there's going to be more. It's hard to sell the modular manufacturers of they're putting assembling these mods or panels or whatever it is. They don't really specify the actual material. Still, you have to go to the architect and the owners and get the product on the floor or on the wall or in the superstructure or whatever it is. So there's a lot you can learn from workshops. There's a lot you can learn from events like this. and it's going to help. The more you invest in this, the more you're going to get out of it. Not just advancing prefabrication, but the whole industry in general.
I also think that fabricators can bring you in as a material supplier.
They can. It's usually because
S-
they're having some other issue with something else. They're like, we need to find something that
Well,
works with this too.
yes, yeah. I mean, so it behooves you to go to events like this and meet all the players because you never know who like that right partner is going to be. And another thing that we didn't, I mean, we alluded to it, but it needs to be said. You have to be honest and upfront. Every single player, like if you're having trouble with your estimating because you don't understand the product, or if you're having trouble with the engineering side of things, um, and by you, I mean any stakeholder. It could be the architect, it could be the fabricator, the GC doesn't quite get it. Like people need to raise their hand as early as possible and not let things fester. Because with these types of projects, once you pass a gate, it's really hard to go back. And the last thing you want to do is look bad and delay the project and have it be your fault. So feeling comfortable speaking up is a really big deal.
Yeah, 100%. So we have some, I guess, knowledge or maybe experiences we're sharing with the audience here. Some of the things we talked about are, how to connect with people, and then doing the work ahead of time to get ready for events like Advancing Prefab. Or I know a lot of folks are going to IBS is
IBS.
just around the
Mm,
corner,
yeah.
and then the AIA show will be on. Everyone plus the regional ones. I really encourage folks to use LinkedIn, and then I think that in your notes that you sent over, I love that you broke down the different personas of who folks could maybe have top of mind to, okay, I'm not going to see everybody. Who's my top person? Like, just like we have ICPs for our industry or for our business, what's my ICP for this event?
That's great. Yeah. And all of your ICPs will be there. You know, specialty trades, project managers from, from GCs, technical people who have worked on projects. There's multiple decades of experience in prefab that are going to be at this event for you to get educated, for you to share what you know if that's, if that's your thing, and to see what others are doing and how others are solving problems. But I wanted to ask you, Tim, I love your LinkedIn strategy for connecting with speakers and influencers in the space, and I think it's great. What would you say to somebody who's like me? Like I'm like partially introverted. I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I don't know, but I'm like right there in the 50-50. What would you say to somebody who's really passionate about this and about growth and development, ambitious, but they're also a little bit shy at some of these networking events, especially if they've never been. If this is your first time going to Advancing Prefab or any of these trade shows that you know nothing about that particular part of the industry, how would you recommend that somebody go about it?
One thing I really appreciate about, I think I've said this several times, probably, Todd Tomlack would tell me, don't assume people know what you know, and what do you believe. If you're talking about those things, that is super important. The hard part is to not talk about those things because you are passionate about it. And I am
Mm,
passionate about this, and I have something to say, whether I'm introverted or not. And if it's just like boiling up in my bones, introverted or not, it's just going to come out. But one thing I always caution folks is, and Zach and Beth has said this, and Mark has said it on a podcast, I've heard it from other people, is nobody cares about you. They're
mm,
there also to get what they can out of the event.
yeah.
And going with a mindset ahead of time of, what can I offer this person, especially if you have three or four, like, I have to meet these people. I'm a little nervous. Do research. And that's what LinkedIn is for. People want to call it stalking. I don't know, but listen to the podcast they've been on, read the articles and the posts they've written, and really try to understand the challenges they've been facing, and what and they're there to meet people too. They're not there. Most of them aren't just going to do their session and then leave. Some will, but just because of constraints on schedule and stuff. But most of them are there also to make other connections, because not everyone's most people's dance card's not full in the industry. They have needs that need to be filled. If we do our pre-call or pre-event planning, we're going to know probably what some of those are, but we also don't want to show up and throw up and like, hey, I have the best solution. I noticed you did this project over here. I read this thing as interview and you said you guys had challenges with this. Well, I have the answer for you. Of course, that's probably old news, but going into the with all that research, even if it's only for 3 or 4 people, and then being in the mindset of, I want to be a resource for you. And I noticed this. I have, somebody else that worked on this project here that you might want to meet. Um, have something to give them. And in the absence of that, I love Andrew Warner's book, Stop Asking Questions, because it opens a way to have to, because these folks are going to get questioned like crazy. There's like
Mm.
tons of questions, tons of people want to talk to them. And I love it. It's like that must have been a wild project to work on. And in the middle of summer, when a blazing heat, that must have been pretty interesting trying to keep all those panels flat in that humidity or something like that. Like leave it an open-ended statement.
Which is
When I
validating at the same time.
Yeah, and people do have question fatigue, but they don't run out of statement. They don't get fatigued from statements. So when we position something like that, or one other thing I like to share is that when I'm at an event and maybe I haven't had a chance to understand this person super well, I'll say one of my favorite things about this event is this. You might find the same thing or not. I don't know. What do you find in here? And a lot of folks will be like, yeah, actually, I think it was been like most years, except for I did learn this one other thing over here, and they'll be happy to share what they, because they, you know they're not, people aren't self-centered, but they do want to share what they've learned. And I think that even if we haven't done a lot of pre-call planning, pre-event planning, we can still say something like that, like, uh, you must be really enjoying this event, or you must have come to this event looking for a specific something, and I'd love to hear what that is. And it's very a genuine way of going about it.
That's great. That is really, really great advice. Stop asking questions. And Andrew Warner, gosh, he's done so many interviews. He's so good. It's so good. It doesn't even feel like an interview. Oh, you're reaching up. There it is. Stop asking
Yeah, here's the
questions.
book. You can get the PDF. I think there's a bunch of little different deliverables, but it really, you can boil it down to that. But so I hope that folks get to, as they're getting ready for the holidays and looking at taking vacation, and sort of this December is sort of like the Sunday of the week, the Sunday night when you look at your week ahead, you're sitting
Hopefully
with
no Sunday scaries.
yeah, you're
Hopefully
sitting,
not.
a lot of folks on Sunday night, and is very well known strategy to, hey, when everyone's in bed Sunday night, or you're just sitting around the evening and you're having a beverage and you have your calendar open, it lets, even if you're just reviewing it real quick, it sort of gets your brain ready. Well, it's the same thing right now. Like you said, you're putting your calendar up, you're getting ready for the events next year, and it's sort of priming those muscles and greasing the skids in our brains of, what we're going to be interested next year. And this is another good time too to take at least a couple of days of goal planning. Like, I know what my boss wants out of next year, or I know what our company is trying to do next year. Hopefully, most folks do by now. Now, what do I want out of next year? I'll leave on this one thing, and I know you've done this in your career too. Uh, but if there's something you really want to do, I've done several events out of pocket because it just was not in the budget at the company I work at,
Mhm.
and that this has been my whole career, even back in the lumber business. If I thought something was valuable, I budgeted for it, and and my own budget and attended myself. And that's been hugely valuable over the years because I didn't want to not do something that was important just because it wasn't in my company's budget. It doesn't always work out, but I'm sure you've done that before.
Yeah, that's like my middle name. Yeah, investing in yourself is the best thing you can do in your for your career, for your income, for your family is investing in your knowledge, following your passion, following. I know it sounds really trite, but it's a cliche for a reason. You got to follow that excitement. Whatever it is that excites you most is what you're going to dedicate time to and what you're going to end up being the possibly the best in your field at. And so, focus on that. And I want to ask you, are we going to do our simultaneous SIP planning session end of year? I do love, I feel like December for me is there you go. Is that Angel's Envy? I love
Yeah,
that.
Angel's Envy is
Nice.
one of my favorites, along with Four Roses and yeah, Woodenville.
So what I love in December is to look back. I think December is a time for looking back. And then I know that it's not necessarily like globally approved, but I think January is a time for planning. Like I like to plan in January and then like seal the plan like near the end of January. And then I feel like, okay, I started the year right. Because okay, so right now I'm planning Q1, but it's like a soft plan. It's not, it's like I'm filling in with dry erase markers on my big
Right.
ass calendar. And and then you gotta let December and the holidays just like percolate and see what feels right to you and come back to it in January when you're fresh and when you're over the holiday hangover, whether you drink or not, and then see what feels right, at least for Q1, and be willing to switch in Q2 and Q3 and Q4. Be willing to pivot, and then you definitely will have an excellent year, a year that you can be proud of.
Yeah, I think that the reason that stands out the most right now, this is, I don't know if it's really an aside. I'm agreeing with you from the standpoint of it seems like the last 5 years, you know, I remember before COVID, by January, things were popping. We're all
Mm,
ready for things to be happening. And of course, you had the demand and supply shock and the ups and downs of COVID. But it seems like now, I don't know if you remember the old the videos of old cars where they had a flivver starter. So instead of a key, it was like a crank on the front of the
uh-huh.
car, and they had to go, and it just seems like it's most folks are having slow starts to the year. It just doesn't seem like things ramp up in the first quarter like they used to. Well, if I'm ramping up hard in the first quarter, like with that January planning and then execution, which another book I love, The Discipline of Getting Things Done, um, then you're ahead of 80% of the competition because a lot of folks don't do a lot until after IBS in our
Mm,
industry, after World of Concrete, after IBS for the commercial and the residential, those
yeah.
two sides. It seems like January is still, I don't know, a slow start for folks. So if we're doing like what you advise, then we're going to be ahead of the curve for the most part. So something to keep in
Yeah.
mind.
There is such a thing as planning too soon. Because you have to have as much information as you can before you plan. And that's what December is about. It's about, reviewing everything. And then after the first of the year, you can go back and see your results and take a look at your metrics and your numbers, whatever it is that they are. And it's just a better informed month. It's just too bad like the world doesn't really wait for that. So you put your dry erase erasable pencil, pencil stuff in and then be willing to make some changes as you have, better information. So more on that at the end of the month.
More on that at the end of the month. And so is that the pod?
This is the pod. So
So
this podcast is made available free to you, our loyal listener, thanks to support from Advancing Prefab and Project Fluent. If today's conversation resonated and you want more strategic and technical insights on prefab, check out Advancing Prefabrication in Dallas this coming year. The link and the discount code are going to be in the show notes.
Yes, and if you love Build Perspectives, please reach out on LinkedIn and comment, subscribe on whatever platform you listen on, or when Carolina or I post. We'd love to hear your comments about this on LinkedIn as well, because your ratings, reviews, and feedback help us to bring new listeners, grow our audience, but most importantly, help us create content that is needed, helpful, relevant, and valuable to you.
Yes, I love getting texts and DMs from you. So please keep them coming and keep suggesting topics and guests. So let us know what you think. Entertaining architecture and construction talk and fresh perspectives, something that Tim's dad says you can never have too much of.
Thanks, everybody.